in Beverly Shores, Indiana, the beautiful Indiana dune land. It's so pretty here any time of year. It's winter now with snow on the ground. It's a huge beach community in the summertime, and everyone from Chicago loves coming here in the summer to go to the beach. But there's some really neat history here in the Indiana Dunes. I've written a lot about Diana of the Dunes, one of the most famous ghosts of the Great Lakes, this hermit who came from Chicago to live on her own in the dunes, and she had this very romantic life down here, and there's been a lot of ghost stories written about sightings of Diana of the Dunes down here. There's also a really cool history right here in Beverly Shores. If you can see right behind me here, this is a replica of the Old North Church in Boston, where the famous "one if by land, two if by sea" signal was set up during the American Revolution. This was related to Paul Revere's Midnight Ride in April 1775. This was one of 10 buildings that were part of the Colonial Village at the Chicago World's Fair of 1933. And this is the only one that survives here. After the fair was over in, I think it was the 1950s, the buildings from the Colonial Village were brought across Lake Michigan from Chicago to the Indiana Dunes and rebuilt here. So also on the lakefront here in Beverly Shores, there are a collection of modern houses that were brought and rebuilt here, the houses of the future, the houses of tomorrow. And it's called the Century of Progress houses, which are, of course, the World's Fair of 1933 was the Century of Progress, which was celebrating 100 years of Chicago. So it's really neat to come here and to see all of this cool Chicago history and American history right here in the Indiana Dune land. And so the reason we're here today is because I'm about to make for you a really traditional American dish that is traced back to Boston and is now not only made in Boston but made all over the country, which people absolutely love, including me. I'm going to make for you today Boston baked beans, but it's going to be a little bit of an improvement, I think, on the classic. So we're making Boston baked beans 2.0 today. So let's go to the kitchen. Hi, I'm Ursula and welcome to my haunted kitchen. I'm so thrilled that you're here with me today because today we are making a true American classic, and that is Boston baked beans and Boston brown bread. We are making all of this 2.0, however, and I'm going to show you why it's 2.0 in just a second. But before that, let's get started with our beans. Now you can use any kind of a pot that has a lid and that's oven safe. But of course, you know, this is the classic, the bean pot. My mom gave me this a few years back, so I am using this. I absolutely love it. So in here, we are going to add some things, okay? First thing we need is 1 yellow onion. So you do not need to chop up this onion. All we're going to do with this onion is to just take off the peel, really. And you know, I like that because I'm really bad at chopping onions, as you already know. So we're just going to take the peel off of this yellow onion, and that's it. That's all you need to do. So we've got that. I'm going to clean up better this time than I did last week. So then we're going to take this pot, and this is what makes it 2.0. Spare ribs or short ribs. Now this is not technically Boston baked beans, so don't yell at me. It's not an improvement or anything like that. This is James Beard's recipe, you know, the famous chef James Beard. He always used ribs. So this is going to be more of like a pork and beans kind of deal. I like this better than using salt pork, which is the traditional Boston thing to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this entire onion at the bottom of the bean pot, right in the middle. And I'm just going to very quickly give a little salt and pepper to these ribs. Just a little bit, as Emerald said. Season both sides of your food. And then we're just going to tuck these around our onion on the bottom of our bean pot. So then on top of here, we're going to put our beans. Now these are The store did not have pinto or navy beans, pinto beans. Those are the traditional beans that are used for Boston baked beans. I find that there's a lot of stuff in the grocery stores that are just not stocked right now. It's very weird. Just standard things. You just can't find them. So anyway, these are cannellini beans. So any kind of, white beans, white kidney beans like these are. And so I soaked these for about 6 hours and then I simmered them for about 45 minutes. So these are already cooked, but they're gonna soak up all of this goodness in the bean pot for a long time in our oven. So let's just take a spoon and get all of our beans in our bean pot. And I know some of these guys one guy already jumped overboard, but that's okay. We'll get him back in here. Okay, so beans in. Get in there, you. Okay, so now just going to take a bowl and we're going to make our sauce for the beans. And for that, we need 1.5 cup of dark molasses or brown sugar, dark brown sugar. You can use whichever one you like, or you can use a combination of both, half and half. It's just totally a matter of taste. Look at that beautiful amber molasses. So lovely. Get a spatula here and get all of this goodness out of here. So molasses. And then to this, we want to add dry mustard. If you don't have dry mustard around, you can use yellow mustard. That's fine. This is just kind of a little bit more subtle of a flavor. So we've got 1 teaspoon of dry mustard. And then I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of black pepper. And we're going to re-season these when they're all done. So, don't worry too much about the amounts here. You can always add more. You can't take it away, remember? I'm going to add just a little dash of allspice. You don't need to add this, but I just kind of like that extra. It's probably about a half teaspoon that I added there. And then we are just going to mix this up. Oh, this is going to be so good. This is really thick, so I reserved the water from when I simmered the beans. I'm going to add just a little bit of water so that I make this slightly more horrible consistency. So when we've got this all stirred up together, I'm just going to pour this over the top of our beans. Get this all in that pot right over the spare ribs and on that whole onion and those par cooked beans. A little more in here. There we go. And then we're going to go back to our water here that we reserved, our bean water, and we're going to just pour in just enough in to cover the beans. So just want the water to be just over the top of the beans. And then we're going to come back during the cooking and check on the level of the water, because we always want the beans to be submerged so that they don't dry out. So now on goes our lid on our bean pot, and these are going into a preheated 250-degree oven. We're going to cook these slow and low for about 4 hours. Might take up to 5.5 hours. We're going to see how it goes. So 250, slow and low, and then about every 2 hours, hour and a half, 2 hours, we want to pull out the pot and check the level of the water, and then just tap off the water to make sure that those beans continue to stay covered during the cooking. Okay, so I'm going to pop these in the oven, and then I'll see you back here in a couple hours to check on the level of our water and to see how our wonderful Boston baked beans are coming. And in the meantime, we're going to start making our Boston brown bread. See you in a minute. Welcome back. Our beans are baking away in the oven, and now we are going to make the classic accompaniment, Boston brown bread. Now, if you're from New England, you could probably go to the grocery store and just buy Boston brown bread. Maybe you've seen it if you've lived somewhere else too. It comes in a can. You can actually buy it on Amazon if you'd like to try it. It comes in a can. You open up the can with the can opener and you slice it. It's a round can, and it's a steamed bread. But we are going to make it on our own, not just because I live in Chicago and I can't get it in the grocery store, but because it's always better, right? So let me take you through how we're going to do this. It is a steamed bread, and you could steam it in the oven if you like, or you can also steam it on the stovetop, and we are going to steam it on the stovetop today. So I've got this cauldron of water simmering away. It's I have made my own sort of steamer thing, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But let me show you how to make the bread. Normally you would make this in a, one of those small coffee cans, which everything seems to be plastic now, so I couldn't find that. These are just vegetable cans, like you would have peas or corn or anything in. So I've got 3 of these. I think I'm going to have enough batter to fill 3 of those, and I've greased them very well, sides and bottom. And that's what we're going to use to steam our bread and to bake our bread in the steam. So here's the recipe, okay? Boston brown bread uses this combination of flours. And again, if you live in New England, you could probably buy the flour that you need, the mixture. I don't, and my store doesn't have it. So we're just going to make it, and it's very easy. You're going to do 1/2 cup each of regular flour. This is just regular white flour. You could use bread flour if you wanted, or just use the self-rising flour too. That's fine. Then we're going to also do 1/2 cup of dark rye flour. And I think most grocery stores, big grocery stores have these kinds of different flours these days. If not, you can, again, find these kinds of things on Amazon. And then 1/2 cup of very fine ground cornmeal. Make sure that it's fine ground, otherwise you're not going to have the texture that you need for this bread. And then to this, we're going to add a 1/2 teaspoon each of baking soda and baking powder. So you're going to need both of those. So again, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. There we go. We're going to add to this a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Where's my salt? Salt, hello. Where's my salt? Salt. I know it just took you out. Let me put the other thing in, and then I'm going to go get my salt. Okay, 1/2 teaspoon of allspice. It's going to make it taste really, really nice. Let me open this up. Whole 1/2 teaspoon of allspice, that nice kind of like gingerbready feel to it. And then you don't have to add this, but I find that it really is nice. Just a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, believe it or not. 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. All right, there we go. 1/2 teaspoon of our vanilla. Let me get my salt, wherever it is. Hold on. I'll be right back. Salt, where are you? Salt. There we go. My mom's salt shaker. She passed away a couple years ago, and I had to have these cute little milk bucket tin milk jug salt shakers, salt and pepper shakers of hers. I just love them so much. So 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then the last thing we need, let's give a quick stir to these ingredients. Make sure all the dry ingredients are incorporated. Whoops. Making a mess, as always, right? Okay. And then we're going to add to this, the liquid is 1 cup of buttermilk. I don't keep buttermilk around. I don't like to buy it because I rarely use it. Substitutes for buttermilk, I used 1 cup of milk. and a tablespoon of lemon juice. You could also use 1 cup of milk and a tablespoon of white vinegar. So I've got the lemon juice. I'm going to put this in here, and then we're going to mix this all up, and we're going to be ready to put this into our tins. And I can hear that water simmering away behind me. All right, looks lovely. Look at that. Boston brown bread coming up. You could put raisins in here if you wanted to. You could put dates in here if you wanted to. I don't really like either of those things, so I'm just going to do as is. Now, the most important thing here is you want to fill up these cans, whatever kind of tin that you use. You want to only fill them up 2/3 of the way. And it looks like we are going to have enough batter here for 2 of these small cans. And again, this amount of batter is meant for a small coffee can. So if you can find one of those small coffee pans, like I think it's a 1 pound coffee can, or I think it's a 1 pound coffee can, you could definitely do it that way. But I don't, so this is fine. You could also just use a loaf pan. But the main thing is that you are going to steam it, and you're not just going to bake it, because you want to have that water, kind of like a water bath around it. So that kind of like a sauna to cook it, right? Okay, so let's get this all in here. I think this is going to be a little more. Put that in there. And then we are going to get our bread in the oven. There's one more thing we have to do. We have to seal these tightly with foil. So I'm just going to take some aluminum foil. I'm just going to cut a little piece here. And then cut this in half so that we can seal the tops of these cans. So cover these each really tight, just like that. And then just to make sure they're really nice and tight, I'm just going to tie each one of them closed with a piece of twine, string, whatever you got, around the house. Don't use a rubber band because it might melt. So just like that. Make sure it's nice and tight. And then we've got our steam going here. I got my steamer basket, and I'm just going to pop these in. Our water is, look at that steam. That's what we want. We're just going to carefully place these in. And then we are going to steam our beautiful Boston brown bread for about 2 hours and 15 minutes. And we know it's done when we stick in a toothpick and it comes out clean. So you want to keep this at a boil, so you keep that steam really going, because the steam is what's going to cook it. So then when it's done, we're going to have our authentic Boston brown bread to serve with our authentic Boston baked beans. Actually, not authentic, 2.0. I'll see you guys soon for our delicious New England feast. See you in a minute. All right, and we're back. And now, after that brief snafu, look at this. Our Boston brown bread with the molasses in it. Okay, so this cooked for about 2 hours and 15 minutes. And so now we've let it cool, and then we can just slice it in these lovely rounds.
Look at how gorgeous this is. Isn't that wonderful? That's what we're going to have with our Boston baked beans pretty soon. All right, let's put this aside. I'm going to eat that later. And let me show you this. I just need a towel and my tongs. So now our beans have been cooking for about 4 hours. And it's going slow. We're going to need more time. But right now, you guys, the smell is insane. It smells so good with that, with those ribs in here. We are going to take out these short ribs that are falling off the bone. So I know we had 4 of these in here. Let's get them all out. And what we want to do is we're going to take these ribs out, and then we are going to take all of the meat off of the bone and put them back into our beans. And I have not had to add any water to this. I told you we, should check periodically to see if we needed to top off the beans to make sure they were still covered with water. I have not had to do that at all. There we go. I knew I had another one in here. And we still have that onion in here. I'm going to leave that in here. That onion is, you can see this starting to come apart. Just going to leave it in there with the beans, okay? So I'm going to take all this meat off the bone, and then I'm going to put it all back into the bean pot, put it back in the oven, and I'm going to leave it for probably another 2 hours because there's still a lot of liquid in here. What we want is for everything to caramelize